Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of A Little Jaded. I'm Kelly, joined by my co host Joanna. And today we'll be discussing all things live events and concert freelancing, from how to get your first gig to what it's like working behind the scenes. Joanna has experience working at concerts and events at her local arena, as well as working freelance with companies like VIP Nation and festivals like Outside Lands and Bottle Rock.
Yes, I'm really excited. I and along with one of our other team members, Mariana, we both just got back from working a festival in Northern California where we're based. It's called Bottle Rock in Napa. Um, we just got back from doing that all last weekend, 3 days, and tomorrow I leave to do another festival back in Napa called La Onda, which is like a Latin music festival. And it's concert season, so all the gigs are kind of starting to come up. And I frequently get asked questions um, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on TikTok, just asking how to get these types of gigs. A lot of people don't really know where to start. I didn't really know where to start either. So we're gonna talk about, how you can get that first gig and how you can continue to do more.
Yeah, and we will be answering all of your burning questions so you can leave Joanna's DMs alone. So before going into the questions, can you touch on what drew you to working in this space in the first place? Was this always the area you wanted to work in?
I feel like, well, I feel like it was and it wasn't because I think what drew me to the music industry in general was concerts, just because I went to my first concert when I was like 14. Um, and before then, I mean, growing up watching like concert documentaries like the Justin Bieber one and the One Direction one, like concerts were always just so fascinating to me. But as a kid, I didn't know the first thing about going to a concert, what it was like how to even prepare. So once I started going to them, quite frankly, because I was old enough and my mom was allowing me to go to concerts, I went ham. Like as soon as I was able to, I had my own money because I had my jobs, I was going to concerts all the time and I loved it. And I just loved the community of being there. I feel like my first like biggest sense of like that community feeling was seeing the Jonas Brothers when they were on their comeback tour in 2019. The entire arena was just buzzing. Everyone was so excited and anxious, and it was just like it felt so cool to be in an arena full of people who are all equally as excited. Which I feel like everyone feels nowadays, like when you're going to see an artist who has such like a niche but strong community. It just feels so cool being in that room. So I just loved that feeling. And I was really interested in what it was like to be behind the scenes. And from that interest kind of stemmed other interests in other areas like marketing and social media and, all this type of stuff. Um, I feel like because of the pandemic, my interest in live events, which I feel like this happened for a lot of people, it kind of got hindered and we kind of had to experiment in different things because concerts weren't really happening until like late 2021. Um, but when you're the person on the other side and you're providing the services for the fans, it feels so cool because you know what it's like to be the fan and to be the one who's really excited. Um, so yeah, that was way too long-winded, but yeah.
No, I'm right there with you. I think a lot of the time I've always also been enticed by live events and concerts and things like that. You really nailed that on the head. Um, like for example, I was really drawn to concert photography from like being a fan of a band and their concert photographer like that toured with them was really cool to watch his
Mhm.
career go. And I
Mhm.
was really interested in wanting to start there, but I'm not that great at photography, so I would still love to be on that opposite side of it, like you were describing. But I need to know, what was your first concert?
First concert ever was All Time Low, which I just got to see
Okay.
them at Bottle Rock, so it felt very full circle to be able to work at a festival where the band that I first saw was playing. It was so cool. It was All Time Low. There was a whole bunch of openers. It was crazy. It was called the Back to the Future Hearts Tour in 2015. It was All Time Low, Sleeping with Sirens, Neck Deep, and One OK Rock. Like that was crazy to be seeing all of those different people. Like I was such a pop punk, like emo girl.
Girl,
Yeah,
that's my dream. That was my dream. I always wanted to go to Warped Tour, but they never came here.
right. We were too young. We just missed that. No, it was cool because I actually just also saw All Time Low just this week after Bottle Rock because they're opening for Avril Lavigne's tour. And I work at a amphitheater in my area called the Shoreline Amphitheater. And so my boss was able to get us tickets. I went with my siblings, and they were saying the last time they were at that arena was at the very last Warped Tour. And I was like, "Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh, this is
God.
so crazy." They were like, "This is deep in the all-time low lore." I was like, "This is so funny." But yeah, I was always so like interested in Warped Tour, but it looked really scary to me also. I feel like that kind of goes in
Yeah.
with like why I wasn't allowed to go to concerts when I was younger was my mom was just like feared she feared for my life. Like, you're gonna get hurt and blah blah blah, which in the grand scheme of things, concerts, I do understand. Like sometimes when I see a little like a baby at a concert, I'm like, why are you here? But
No, my first concert was actually with my mother and my brother, the only concert he ever went to. I was 9 and I went to see Selena Gomez and the Scene in 2011. And
iconic.
everybody in my grade went to that concert. You ask someone their first concert, it was that one.
That's amazing. Who was your opener? Do you know?
Christina Perry? No, Christina Grimmie,
Oh my
the one
God.
who died.
Wow, wow. Oh,
R.I.P.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's iconic though. Like Selena Gomez and the scene, not just Selena Gomez, like
yeah, it was so fun. Anyway, let's move on. Um, so describe your first gig. What was the show or event, your role, and how did you obtain it?
yes. This is so full circle with us right now because for anybody who doesn't know, me and Kelly are really big fans of Luke Hemmings and 5 Seconds of Summer, all the things. And we've been working together for a few years, but we're finally going to meet at a Luke Hemmings concert, which is like this episode is going up literally like tomorrow. So after this goes up, it'll be in like a few days from now. But I vividly remember my first gig was the day the album came out, his first album, When Facing the Things We Turn Away From. So that was back in 2021. Again, concerts weren't really happening until like mid 2021. This was like, I believe it was August.
Yeah.
And I have a friend, shout out Lisa. She's amazing. I knew of her because of Fan to Band. We were both a part of Fan to Band and just, through making mutual connections. And I never realized until a little while after that she was based like in NorCal, which is where I'm based, Northern California. And I saw she was working coincidentally at the Shoreline where I now work at an amphitheater. She was posting that she was working there, and I thought it was really interesting because I wanted to work at any concert. Like I just wanted to experience it because at that point like nothing was happening yet. So I just asked her to hop on a call. I picked her brain about it. She told me about the different companies that she worked for, one of which is a local company called Another Planet Entertainment. They're really great. They actually are the promoter for Outside Lands Music Festival, which I have been working every year for the past 3 years. They have, which I recommend to anybody who's listening who might be based in Northern California. They have a little, like they have a system where you can work as an usher slash ticket taker slash like security guard, like whatever it is that they need basically. And she told me about that. So I signed up, and my first gig was for this like EDM, not festival, but it was like an event where they had multiple DJs, so like kind of a festival. It was called Crush in San Francisco, at a local auditorium or local-ish to me. I'm like an hour away from San Francisco. And it was not a paid role, but I just wanted the experience of working at a show. So I was checking IDs because it was a rave. It was a little bit more, we had to make sure everyone was 18 plus. Um, so I was just checking IDs outside the venue. That's literally all I was doing, but it felt so cool to finally be able to be a part of that. And then after get to go inside and watch a little bit and just like see what was going on inside.
Right. No, I totally get it. Also, the whole thing about even taking unpaid gigs, you just want to build your experience as much as you can, and I feel like that's any person's route to it.
Yeah.
Um,
And I feel like that kind of turns people off a lot. And that's something that even
yeah,
like when describing the situation to my mom, she'll be like, "Why would you do this for free? Why would you drive an
yeah.
hour away for a gig that's not even paying you or is like paying
You're
you not
losing
that much?"
money because you're paying gas.
Right.
Yeah,
She's like, "You're losing money." And I'm like, "It's really just for to put something on your resume to say that you've done it for the experience." And in this industry, whether it's live events or just music in general, like there are going to be a lot of situations where there are going to be really great opportunities, but they might not be paid. And it's really unfortunate. And
yeah,
if you, at the end of the day, if you're like, I don't want to work for free, that's your own, I totally understand. It really is like rough. Um, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's worth it. Like I had to work that unpaid gig to eventually get my next paid one,
right.
um, which was coincidentally like Bottle Rock. That was like my first like really big gig, but it was paid and I was super excited. And I know we're gonna talk about networking, but like I got like all of my gigs in like that first like 6 months of like getting started in 2021 was because of my friend Lisa, because I hopped on a call with her. I told her like I really am curious about what you do. I want to do that too. Like any wisdom you can give me, like please. And we just got along. We got along well, and I guess she just saw my drive, and she would send me any opportunity that was happening in the Bay Area in Northern California, and one of those was Bottle Rock. I ended up getting it. She also sent me my first VIP Nation gig too. And after that, like it kind of snowballed into a lot of different things.
That's kind of a good point that you mentioned because I think that a lot of the times we also don't want to put ourselves in situations where we won't get anything back or you think you won't get anything back, but also you make those connections. People look out for you. They send you opportunities. Like you sent me something on LinkedIn the other day. Like
Yeah.
when you create those connections, you're inevitably opening doors for yourself, even if it's in the future. So my next question would be, how do you go about getting to know others who work shows?
Yeah. I think, I mean, I think it's good to just literally just cold message and to just reach out. And something that I've also realized is this industry, everybody knows everybody. Like, especially if you don't work. I mean, honestly, even if you do live in a major city or you don't, like, I live in like a semi-major city, but not really. But I live like an hour away from all the gigs, like San Francisco,
Hmm.
Oakland, Berkeley, um, Napa, where the festival is, it's like an hour and a half. So all the people in my general area are all also working a lot of the same gigs. So you see so
Hmm.
many familiar faces. So when you're reaching out to somebody, odds are that you might already have a connection to this person and you don't even know. But I mean, with Lisa, I reached out to Lisa. I reached out to this other friend of mine. Shout out Sydney. She's not based in my area. She's actually based on the East Coast. Um,
Hmm.
and I was just like, I see you work for this company. I like Sydney specifically. She was working as a runner for Live Nation, and I just wanted to know what that was like. And I mean, in general, you hear a company like Live Nation, and you're like, oh my gosh, like that's a dream company to work with because they're so huge. So I was just like, I want to know, like, how did you get to Live Nation? What do you do with them? What's your recommendation to me if I want to work for a company like that? And I feel like most of the time people are open to calling with you. Just this week, I've messaged like two or three people who have jobs that I'm interested in, and I asked them like, "Hey, would you be down to like have a call or next time I'm in town, do you want to get coffee?" And most of the time people are like, "Oh my God, yeah." Because think about like you in 5 years, if somebody messaged you, you're probably also gonna be like, "Yeah, sure." Like it's not, it seems really scary, but especially if you're in the beginning, you have to do that.
Hmm.
Like if I had never reached out to Lisa, I would have never found out about Another Planet Entertainment. I would have never gone Bottle Rock. I would have never found out about VIP Nation. And like all of these things are things that I do, and like these are companies that I work with so frequently now. Um, so there's that spectrum, but then also when you're at a show, like when you're working a gig, just talk to people. Something that happened to me that I feel really lucky for is when I worked at Bottle Rock that year, because it was my first like big anything, I was talking with everybody and I was like, how did you get your job? How long have you been doing this? Like I was just really curious, and I think that really worked in my favor. And I was a college student. So if you're a college student, use that angle, like just saying like I'm a college student, like I just want to like learn about what you do and like all that stuff. And I was talking to somebody who was in my area, and we connected on LinkedIn, I believe. We just connected on LinkedIn, and she sent me my first opportunity to be a runner with Goldenvoice, because she was like, again, she was just like, oh, you just seem like you want to really do this. So I'm gonna help you out, type of thing. Just as like Kelly said, like, I know like she wants to have more experience and things like that. So like I'll send it to her. Or if I see an opportunity that's not in my area, but I know a friend who lives in that area, I'll send that to them. Just not being afraid to talk to people, I think is the biggest thing, which I know can be really hard because if you're not naturally extroverted, it can be hard to step out of your comfort zone. But I'm so grateful that I did. And I feel like deep down I was scared people are going to think I'm a weirdo. Like, why are you asking me these questions? Why are you talking to me? And usually, like, you can read the room and see if somebody's down to talk to you. And most of the time, the people at these events are a little bit more extroverted and more talkative type people, because these shows are so based on like customer service. Like you have to be a people person to work in events. You really do.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, just like talk to people, ask them questions. If you see somebody who has a job that you like, connect with them on LinkedIn, follow them on Instagram, like follow them on TikTok, message them on TikTok. Like it goes such a long way. And if they don't reply, they don't reply. But if they do, that could be a really big opportunity.
And I want to mention also that, like, when you're reaching out to people, you don't want to just ask them a flat out question and just run with it. I think it's really good to also create a rapport with someone,
Hmm.
um, and try to just be a create a genuine connection, even if it's just for like a 30-minute period of a day where you're hanging out with them. It's not
Yeah.
like it's better in your it, it's in your own best interest to create that connection, because then the next time they think about you, they'll remember that one conversation that you had that was really meaningful. Um,
Yeah.
like for example, I remember working a VIP assistant gig, and I was asking a couple of the people who are also VIP assistants how they usually get into this, because they've both mentioned that they've done a bunch of gigs, and I was like, since when? When did these things happen? But I only asked them at the end of the night because we had already spent the entire day together, and I felt more comfortable that way. And that's coming from someone who's very shy and like pretty introverted. Um, it's always best to create that connection so that way you feel also more comfortable coming up to them and asking a question. I feel like there's sometimes this issue where some people are a little too forward, and it kind of turns other people off from them. So that's something also to consider.
On the topic that you were saying, like making those like meaningful connections and making like just being a genuine person, I agree. I have gotten some like being very like open about it. I have gotten some DMs where people be like, "Hey, how do I get this job?" And sometimes it's just like, well, it feels a little like, oh, they're trying to get something from you. They don't care about you. Also, like when you're making these connections with people, it can literally be as like basic as like, oh, like, do you like this artist? Like, oh, you don't? Like, what kind of music do you like? Oh my God, I love that music too. Like, I'm gonna be so for real. Like, when I first had that call with my friend Sydney, it was a little bit awkward because they started off very professional. Like, me asking these
Right.
questions that I had written down because I was nervous. That was my first time meeting with somebody I had never known, and it was a phone call. I was so nervous. I was definitely very, like, on edge, like, it was definitely, like, a little bit, like, weird energy, but then we started talking, and then she mentioned that she was a huge fan of 5 Seconds of Summer. Guards went down because I was like, "Oh my god, I love 5 Seconds of Summer," and then from there, like, we just made a mutual connection, and, like, even, like, now, like,
Yeah.
we worked a 5 Saw show together, like, as VIP assistants, and, like, now she's on a tour with an artist, and she sent me the listing and was like, "Hey, I don't know if I'm coming in your area, but, like, here's the listing just in case," because, like, we have that relationship and she trusts me and, like, she's seen me work now, but she also, like, likes me as
Mhm.
a person, so she's sending me an opportunity. So it's
Right.
just as simple as, like, you're all working in the music industry because you all like music. I'm sure you can find some sort of common ground to just connect with each other and build
For
a
sure.
genuine, like, connection, but also, like, try to make a friendship out of it. I think is one of the biggest things that I try to do with these connections is just, be cool with each other and, just
Yeah.
simple as that.
I think another good example, and then I'll move on. But another good example is our journalism intern, Rebecca. We
Mhm.
briefly spoke last summer, actually. We kind of hit it off, and I kind of remembered her a lot more prominently compared to other people that I met in a specific Zoom call because of how engaging she was. Not only that, but also because we had very similar interests in music. And then when I interviewed her for her position, we really hit it off on similar favorite artists and things like that. So anything can breaks the ice can really also just go a long way.
Also, like, one more thing about Rebecca, she is kind of intertwined with different, like, fan communities and different industry communities that I have in my area because she's also California based. So
Mm-hmm.
she was already in my she was already, like, kind of in my circle of people that I frequently
Mm-hmm.
see online. So she started off as a Jada University student. When I saw that she applied, I was like, "Oh my god, I know her." Like, of course I wanna give her this opportunity because I know how passionate she is about music, and I just know she's, like, a decent person. So, of course, I'm gonna be like, "Yeah, I wanna give her this opportunity." And when it came to picking an
Right.
intern, she sticks out at the forefront of my mind because I already see what she does on a daily as just a lover of music and all the things that I see from her own personal social media and, like, her own skills that I could just see that way. So it felt so obvious to me, like, oh, let's offer her the role because I
Right.
already know her in that way. And that's not to say, like, you should only hire your friends because that's kind of a
Yeah, no.
sticky that's kind of a sticky area, but, like, if you know this person and you know their qualities, then of course you're gonna be more likely to recommend them for a role. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like you're trying to be, like, this person that you're not, like, just being genuine, and people will see that and they'll like that, and they wanna move people up who are genuine.
Right. Okay. So can you elaborate on what a typical show day looks like for you, whether that be working festival, working as a VIP assistant, or any other things that you're doing?
Yeah, I feel like every day is so different depending on what your role is. And even if you do have the same role, like if you're freelancing, you're working for a different artist, you're working with a different team. So I think the important thing first, no matter what role you're doing, is just be open to new
Mhm.
things and
Mhm.
show that you're open to them to, whoever the coordinator is or, like, whoever your supervisor is that you're working directly with. Show that you're very open and that you're very flexible to whatever it is that they need because every day, like, when you think about the craziness of just attending a show and getting into the arena, think about all the things that are happening backstage and all the things that people are doing, like all these moving pieces that have to work in order to get that artist on stage. Like, there's so many things. So just being flexible and understanding that there's so many things going on and putting yourself out there, like, I am here to assist you and to help you in any way possible, even if it's out of my job description. Like, just putting it out there like, hey, let me know if you need anything else. Um because when you're a VIP assistant, for example, I feel like that's one that a lot of people are the most curious about. Um, every day is going to be different, but it really depends on the tour. So for working in VIP, there is a VIP touring rep. We've talked with Vivian, who's on our team. She is currently a touring rep and she's been through a lot of different tours. She's done like the Jonas Brothers, she's done Twice, she's done August D from BTS, like she's done a lot of different things. So there's one person that coordinates the VIP experience on the entire tour, and they're hiring local assistants at every tour stop to help create that experience for the fans who
Mm-hmm.
are purchasing it. So it differs. Some experiences are really minor and they only need like 4 people. Some there's like a meet and greet and a sound check, so they want like 10 assistants. Um, some of them have lounges. Some of them it's just a VIP bag. So there's that. Sometimes they'll have you get there even extra early to count the stock of what they already have made from previous shows because usually say they sell like 1,000 VIP packages. Most of the time, not everybody shows up. So sometimes, like if there's 1,000 bags that need to be made, we'll make 1,000, maybe only 700 were claimed. That means that there's 300 left over that they can pass over to the next one. So the next people at the next stop are going to count out, okay, how many do we have? How many do we need for today? So it's always going to be different. If you are interested in working at a venue, there's roles like, ticket taking, parking attendants, there's box office attendants, there's ushers, like that type of stuff is usually a little bit more cookie cutter. Like you have one role and you kind of stick to it, but it still is a really great place to start because that type of stuff is solely like application based. A lot of people are always really interested in production running, which is something that I've done before, but production running is you're basically like running errands for the tour or for the artist, depending on who you're assigned to. Usually there's multiple runners,
Yeah.
and somebody will be the runner for the touring team, somebody will be the runner for the artist, somebody will be the runner for the venue. So whoever you are assigned to, they'll give you a list of everything that they need. So if you're assigned for the artist, then usually you're buying the writer, which I feel like most people kind of know what that is nowadays, but it's like what the artist really wants in their green room, in their dressing room. So like their favorite snacks or alcohol or whatever. If you're for the venue, like I was sent before to buy like batteries and like, stuff like that. Like it can be anything, or like going to buy coffee for the touring team or going to buy coffee for the artist. And that type of thing is an all
Yeah.
day gig versus something like VIP or ushering. You have like your scheduled shift and that's
Right.
usually it. You usually don't really go over that. Sometimes you honestly go under, like depending on what it is. Like sometimes you're scheduled for 8 hours and they're like, okay, like it's been 6 hours, but we don't really need you guys anymore. Like you're cut. And
Yeah.
yeah, for running, it's usually like a 12-hour thing or maybe even more. Like
Mm-hmm.
they have you get there before the teams get there, like the artists and everything get there, and then you're there until they leave. Usually you'll need a driver's license. So if that's something that you're interested
Okay.
in doing too, make sure you have a driver's license.
I
And
was about to
usually,
ask if you need a driver's license because I don't.
yes. So something like that, it's a great way to understand what happens backstage because when you're an
Right.
usher or when you're working at a festival, you're usually not actually backstage. You're usually dealing with more of the front-facing things, like you're dealing with the
Mm-hmm.
fans, what everyone else is kind of seeing, like the outer
Right.
part. But the backstage stuff is usually a little bit harder to kind of understand. And when you're a production runner, you are backstage because you're talking with all the people, and you're helping all of them out. So that's a really great way to kind of get to know different people, especially if you're trying to do stuff in like audio or if you want to be like a roadie type of person or you want to be in production. That's a really great way to meet those people because you're not always go, go, go. A lot of the time, like if they don't have anything for you, they just want you there. So sometimes I'll be chilling and I'll just be asking like, "Hey, so like how long have you been doing this job? Like, do you like your job?" Like just like small stuff like that.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, some of these are really long days. So, although the idea of working the show seems glamorous from an outside perspective, with every job, there are the grueling and not so glamorous parts. So, can you describe some of the challenging aspects of the job, whether that be working a festival or VIP or running or anything like
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. From the outside, it does look like, oh my God, you're working at concerts. It's so fun. It's like, it
that?
is so fun. It is honestly like a pure definition of like a dream job is like working at concerts and working at festivals. Like, it is something that is like so cool and like something to be grateful for.
Yeah.
But the behind the scenes stuff can be a lot. Like I said, like
Yeah.
12-hour days is not for the weak. Like if you it's something that you have to kind of like understand yourself and understand what your limits are and the kind of job that you're looking for long term. Because if you're the type of person where you're like, I want to work 9 to 5 and be done and like have my night to myself and do all that, like that's not the lifestyle you're gonna have if you're working at events. Like
Right.
I have a friend who strictly does like freelancing and she is all over NorCal. She's constantly driving to different venues because her office changes every day. Um, and she'll make jokes like, yeah, like I'm on like day 2 of no sleep. Like she'll say stuff like that, but like it is kind of the reality where if you're working back-to-back events constantly, or even if you're somebody who dreams of going on tour, like you're not going to have the comfort of going home every day and having your bed and having your dog or having seeing your family. And I even saw a
Right.
clip on TikTok of this girl talking about like the realities of being on tour, saying like you're going to miss things. And that's something that I've even had to deal with, is like you'll take this really exciting gig and then something happens on that day and you might miss it, something in your personal life. And that's something that is like something that you have to think, like, is that something that you're willing to do? Like, are you willing to work on weekends and get home at
Hmm.
like 2 in the morning? Like, that's something that comes with it. So it's just understanding yourself and understanding your body and what you can take. If you're an active person and you like being on the go and like you like a non-traditional schedule, then this is for you. But even with me, sometimes I've been like, damn, like, is this something I want to do long term? I don't know. Like, it's it is a lot and you have to be kind of honest with yourself. And I think everyone should try it out and see if they like it, because maybe you love
Hmm.
it. Maybe you'll thrive off of the non-traditional schedule. But if you like listening to this, if you're like, I don't want to do a 12-hour shift, I want to, clock in when I do every day and clock out, then that's fine. Maybe being more behind the scenes of like the concert production would be great for you. Um, or like concert marketing or something. Like maybe that's more your speed, but
Right.
because you're gonna be so tired. Like I got back from working Bottle Rock and I was so tired, borderline about to be sick, because you're interacting with so many different people. You're on your feet
Right.
all day. Sometimes, like when it's a festival, you're outside all day. It's hot and then it gets freezing at night. Like, and then
Knowing
obviously,
your limits
yeah,
too,
for sure.
like you who's doing 2 festivals like week after week. I'm like, girl, recover.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is it is a lot. And like the experience obviously ends up being worth it every time, like even if you're exhausted. But if that's something that you only want to do every now and then, like maybe you want a 9 to 5 and then, work shows on the weekends, then do it. And when you are working shows, I have to say my best friend is a protein bar, a liquid IV, and a vitamin C packet, because you need to be like
Yeah.
you need to be aware of like you're probably not going to be eating that much, you're not going to be drinking that much because you're on the go. So you need to have stuff like that on hand.
I think a lot of the times we talk about things that like following your dreams or whatever, but like you really have to love it. You really do, because a lot of the times people get into things because they think they know what it is or they think they can handle certain things, but like if you can persevere despite any, turmoil that comes with it, like you really just have to love it to get through it. because for if you really do love it, like the pros outweigh the cons. And I think that's like what I've been saying to my friends who are just who need career advice or anything like that. Like it doesn't even have to be with music, but you really just have to love what you're doing, even if some of it's hard, because otherwise it's going to be too much on you. And if you think that it's going to be too much on you, 12-hour shifts, working nights mostly, or working long days in weird weather, like it really depends. And if you can handle it, or if you think you love it more than any of the cons that come with it, like then look, you're set.
Yeah.
But it's always
Yeah.
something you need to consider.
Yeah, I think even if you're like, oh my God, I love concerts, I want to work them, like you say that, but maybe you don't really, thinking about like everything that comes into it and like hearing all this, is that something that you want to do? Because I think concerts,
Mm-hmm.
working live events is always the first thing that people think of because we all love concerts, we all love music. Like, of course, I would want to work at a concert, but like thinking about all these things. And another thing is if your goal is to get to more of that behind the scenes role where you're like a production coordinator or production assistant and you're more working with your team, you have to go through the roles that are like the grueling like customer service type of roles first. Like
Yeah.
box
Yeah.
office attendant, parking, ushers, like you're gonna be dealing with the guests at the shows. Like even
Right.
my role at Bottle Rock was I was a VIP attendant in the platinum area of the festival. So I'm dealing with people who paid so much money to be there.
Right.
They are expecting the best possible experience. So it is a lot of pressure to, put on this like, hey guys, like who's having fun? Like, but then on the opposite side, you can deal with some difficult customers, and I dealt with one
Right.
in this. Luckily, I only dealt with one. Everyone else was really, really great, but I dealt with one, and it was in that moment where I was like, ugh, like, you know, it sucks. It's like when you're working in
Yeah.
like a restaurant or something and you deal with like a not so great customer, but like that's gonna come everywhere. And I have to
Yeah.
remind myself like first of all, it's not personal. They don't know me. That's something that somebody I was working with this weekend helped me. Is he was like, it's not personal. Like they have nothing against you. They are just like
They're hot or they're tired, you
yeah,
know.
exactly. Like there's so many different things in the environment that are
Hmm.
making them act this way towards you, and you are just the person who is helping them. It's the same thing as when you're working at a restaurant. Um,
Yeah.
but, my goal is to get to a point where I'm no longer in these customer service type roles. You're always gonna have to understand like this is a guest facing industry. So if you're the type of person who doesn't
Right.
want to work in that kind of thing,
Like those 8-hour shifts working in retail, are can you still do it if it's in a different industry?
yeah. And I think
I say yes, but that's just me,
yeah,
Going off of that, so what are some tips for someone who hasn't even begun their journey into the industry? So, you do mention that, you need to get into those like customer facing opportunities and things like that, but where do you begin? How do you start and how did you get your start?
yeah. I think if anyone goes back to listen to our episode with Carla J, she has a lot of really great experience too on just like how to start. But I think when I started in general, like I was literally like following every possible page that I could follow, following every person that came up on my feed that was working in music or working at concerts or whatever. Doing that on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, like doing your research, I think is really great and like finding those people to have those calls with. And then, like I said before, you have to build the courage to send those cold messages and to schedule those calls, even if you might be a little bit awkward at first, do that. And not every connection is gonna be a good one, I think. Like, I've had some calls with
Mm-hmm.
people where, like, we had a connection call and, like, we just didn't click, and that's fine. Like, you don't have to force it to happen. Like, the good ones,
Right.
the best ones are gonna happen so naturally. And those are the ones that are gonna be the ones that are the most beneficial to you in the future. If you want just general experience too, like look at like if you're in college, for example, if your sports department is hiring, like if they need
Oh,
anybody at your local theater. Like I also one of my first like paid stuff is I worked as an usher at a theater that's on my campus, and they would literally like do like plays and stuff. Anything like that falls under the umbrella of the live events industry. Having experience in any of that stuff is great. Like I know Mariana right now, she's working as like a fan engagement assistant um at for like her
Oh, I
sports
love that.
department. Yeah, like for her sports department, they want people who are at the games and are just like interacting with the fans and getting content and helping set up photo ops and stuff like that. Like stuff like that is still going to help you and still something to put on your resume. So even if it feels like a really small experience, it's still something that's going to help you out in the long run.
Transferable skills,
Ex-
anything that you're doing, any job, anything really that you're doing or you're putting your energy into can be, you can translate those skills that you get from that and put it into a job that you're looking for. Like I said, even if it's not in the music industry, but if you are looking for working live events, like I said, customer service, like you said, working, some in a sports department or working in a theater, working in a movie theater also, if you're just
Yeah,
like at the box office, you know how to use a box office. You know how to
right,
be at a box.
right,
So
exactly.
you're picking up those skills regardless. And if you can sell it, you can sell it and you may get that job. And I say that with a grain of salt. But
Right.
um
And I was also gonna say, like, depending on where you live, you probably have some
mhm,
sort of venue near you. Like, I have an arena that's in my city, and like they have concerts, they have hockey games, and I
yeah.
also had a job there at one point. I would say do it, especially, when it's like the summer, like this time. Like, if you have an amphitheater near you, now is concert season. Like, now is when everything's gonna be happening. Um,
Yeah.
Even if you have to work the not so fun events, like I feel like that shows your persistence even more because you're
Mhm.
doing the events that are not just the fun ones.
Yeah, and also there's also completely different things that are going on. I don't know about you, but in my city, for example, we have a lot of festivals that go on throughout the summer. Not like we have a jazz festival, we have like the Just for Laughs festival, which is a comedy thing. And there's opportunities everywhere to even just get your foot in the door, even if it's like not necessarily your all-time goal or dream. Experience is experience, and you can get it anywhere if you put yourself in those shoes, and if you put yourself in those positions, you're building your resume or your CV. So
Yeah.
there's definitely things you can gain from that.
I
But,
wanted to flip it to you, because we were
right.
talking about this before about how, like I said before, like I mean, I'm lucky that I live next to some major cities where there are a lot of like gig opportunities. But,
Hmm.
Kelly, like we've talked about before, like you don't even live in the US. So like how is that for, gaining opportunities there? Because obviously, like depending on where you live, there are going to be more or less opportunities. Um and like, you were able to get the one with Vivian doing the Jonas Brothers.
Hmm.
Um so yeah, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So thanks, Joanna. Um, I think like the whole thing with Viv, with the Jonas Brothers, that was really just that happened to be because I've known her for a while, but that's because of networking, technically. She thought about me. I reached out to her when the tour dates dropped, and she said, "I have you already on my file. I'll email you when I can." And then I got it like that. And I also done. I've also tried to make my own opportunities in some way. I've applied to different things, didn't get them because interviews were grueling, but I've done volunteering with Reverb, which was also super fun. We were selling water bottles and trying to promote sustainability in touring, and it was super fun. And it's a different type of way. It's not paid, but it is volunteering, and it is a good cause. I know, for example, you do or you've done like Headcount, which is a similar type of um path, which is volunteering, I guess, and you're trying to promote, registering to vote for the election. Um, and so there are opportunities, even if some of them are not paid and some of them are um, hard to find, you can still find them if you put yourself out there. Um, I did 2 shows with Reverb. I'm still waiting. The only problem in my own city really is that a lot of the artists, a lot of touring artists nowadays don't come here. It's sad, but it's true. So it's kind of harder to find opportunities. But like I said, like I'm trying to find different ways to get in. Like for example, the Just Relax or the Jazz Festival. I'm trying to figure out how to get into a festival that usually happens, like a music festival. Um, at the end of the summer. Still looking, but like I said, it's not the easiest thing, and I want to stress that enough. Like I don't think I can stress that enough. It's not easy to find opportunities that are so like your dream type of opportunities that are not easy to come by. If you're putting in the work and if you're trying and if you're networking, if you're talking to people, trying to see how they got there, go through LinkedIn and try to see who's working those shows, who works in those companies who create those shows. There's always something that you can come from it, I think.
Yeah, and I think persistence, I mean, we've said it like a few times already, but like persistence really is like key because I
Mm-hmm.
have so many friends who this is their dream area.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's nowhere for them except for working and touring or like working in live events. Like I have friends, like I said, I have friends who do like strictly freelancing. I have a friend who was working in tech and then she started doing events and she realized that she loved it. She quit her full-time job to fully pursue freelancing, which is crazy. And for a little while it was kind of dry and she was kind of upset about it and was like, damn, do I have to go back to getting another job? But she was really persistent about it and she's on a tour right now. Like that type of stuff, obviously, it's not it's not going to happen that way for everybody, but
Right.
like showing your persistence and taking any available opportunity that you
Mm-hmm.
possibly can. And like Vivian, who toured with the Jonas Brothers, like she was working live events. Like she quit one of her part-time jobs also to commit more time to working shows
Mm-hmm.
like every weekend and like driving to the city because she lives like an hour from LA, but she would drive to LA to work those shows every weekend. And, people saw that she was dedicated and then people recommended her to go on a tour. So it's really about the connections, building the connections and showing that you're
Yeah.
really dedicated and that you're really persistent and
Mm-hmm.
willing to put in some work that can be a little bit scary, willing to make sacrifices, I feel like is usually what ends up paying off for a lot of people.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
it's gonna be hard. And like I said, every situation is gonna be different for everybody. Like and your timeline is gonna be different too. Like Viv got on
Yeah.
the tour after only a year, which is pretty fast. One of my friends,
Yeah,
it took her like 3 years. It really depends on it's like a right place, right time situation.
for sure. Um, and on a final note, what's one piece of advice someone in this industry has given you? Because all this entire podcast is about advice. So what's the best piece of advice you've gotten?
I this was something that stood out to me so much, like so much that I wanted to write it down, you guys. Like I had to write it down so that I didn't forget because it stood out to me on the last day of Bottle Rock when I had my difficult experience. Like I was talking with a security guard who is at my section. And we are just chit-chatting, we were stationed together like the entire day. So, we would get to know each other, we would talk about different things. And he mentioned to me that he worked in the entertainment industry in Hollywood for like 10 years. And he'd seen a lot of things and he'd seen a lot of different people. And he said that the main advice that he could offer me was to be undeniable. And at first I was a little bit confused. I was like, what do you mean be undeniable? And he said, like what he means by that is just work really hard and be really
Yeah,
confident in your abilities and be confident in your abilities to improve also and like be open to improvement and just be there. Just be undeniably your best. Like we said, like from the front from like the outside, things look so perfect and like everyone has their shit together. And most of the time, people don't. Like I think it's just like you just have to realize like everyone is constantly learning, but
yeah,
what makes these people get these opportunities is, they jump at the opportunities, if you say like, yes, I'm going to do it, yes, I know how to do it, be so undeniable that people are like, yeah, like I trust her. I trust that this person is
Yeah.
going to do their best. Um, and I think it's like sometimes it is a little fake it till you make it, and that's fine. But, just be confident that you are going to do the best that you possibly can and do that. And I think that is what's going to help you stand out because doing the bare minimum it just isn't enough in this industry. Like
Right.
you have to show initiative. You have to just you have to be the one who's always like, I'll do it. Like, yeah, I feel like that when he was telling me that, I was like, damn, like that really like opened my eyes to like different things and changed the way I'm going to be acting at different events now and in different roles in general. Like, even if it's not live events, like just always being the one who's like open to change and open to learning new things, even if it's a little bit scary. And even if you might not be that experienced in it, just try and show that you're willing to try. And I think people will always like that.
Right. I think that's the best notes to end on. So thank you, Joanna, for giving us all of your advice and answering our frequently asked questions. Yeah, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of A Little Jaded.